Welcome, everyone, to the Rotary Club of Tulsa. We have a great meeting in store for you today. I am John Raines, President-elect of the club. Jeff Hassel is out on a special assignment, something about Mission Impossible or something like that. And we certainly look forward, especially after I'm done today, to his return next week. I must apologize to everyone. I woke up with a terrible crick in my neck, so if I turn like this, it's that. But it was the last left candidate that joined, just pulled me that direction. I don't know what it is. We're glad that each of you chose to make today a beautiful Rotary Day. The weather is gorgeous, the relationships are wonderful, and we're here to be blessed and to be a blessing to others. We're also glad to see so many visitors here today. We encourage you to take part in this wonderful club and consider joining. Now let's begin with our invocation. So if John Howland, Phil Armstrong, and Chris would come up. John's going to lead us in our invocation. Phil will lead us in song and pledge, followed by Chris with visitor introductions. Now, John with the invocation.
Thank you, John. Let us pray. At the start of this new school year, we pray that we find the funding that our public schools need, that our educators receive the respect and assistance they deserve, that our school leaders provide the leadership needed to allow the Tulsa Public Schools to return to the level it was when I and many in this room attended its schools. We also pray for those in our rural community, particularly those displaced through wars that seem never to subside. We pray that they may have hope for the future and opportunities for work and meaningful lives, and that their children may have the benefit of education so that they too may have these benefits. We also pray for our sister nations who have taken in millions of these displaced individuals. Finally, let us respect the inherent dignity and worth of each person, realizing that our common humanity unites us all and that through our interdependence, we share a common fate. That our differences of race, skin color, economic background, and party affiliation are merely superficial, and that, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, God has no religion. Amen.
Let us sing together the lyrics from the poem Pike's Peak, written in 1865 by Catherine Lee Bates, that we know as America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. For those of you who are visitors, you're in club number 2500 in District 6110. I'd like to welcome all of our visitors, host Rotarians, and visiting Rotarians. And we have a great number of visitors here today for our distinguished speaker. So in the interest of time, we're going to do our abbreviated version. We'd like you all to stand up and we're going to welcome you. All visitors. We're very, very glad you're here. Now, if the visiting Rotarians would stand up, all the visiting Rotarians across the room, we'd like to welcome you with a welcome Rotarian. All right. All right, thank you, and come back and join us again.
Okay, now's for everyone. It's time to take out your phone, and first of all, make sure it's silenced. And then second of all, get ready to take some notes. If you're not digitally inclined, there is paper and pads on the table if somebody hasn't snagged it already. This will be a great program, and I know you'll be ready to take some notes. We have some outstanding programs coming up in the weeks ahead, and I wanted to highlight a few of those with you. On September the 2nd, we have Cheryl Siddiqui an Islamic Council of Oklahoma and an Islamic Society of Tulsa member. The following week, we have Cheryl Miller, who is a Langston University women's basketball coach. That will be a power-packed sports program for sure. On the 16th, we'll hear from our city councilor, G.T. Bynum. He's going to talk about keeping the water that we have in the river. I was at Keystone Lake. I have a theory about that. Keep it full, you have water in the river. On the 21st of October, we have Business Visitation Day coming up. If you would like to volunteer to host one of those, please see Barney James in the next 2 weeks to sign up for that. And he will guide you in how to put on one of those programs and set you up with how to get people signed up. We are looking for hosts, so we'd appreciate your help there. Mark your calendars now with all of those upcoming programs and plan to be here, and of course, bring your guests. We don't have any, well, we have one committee meeting today. It's the yearling committee in room 233. We want to thank today's sponsor, Rich and Cartmill. And the members of Rich and Cartmill that are members of our club are Vaughn Graham, Scott Selman, Dave Morgan, Ed Bentley, and Jack Mandeville. We appreciate your sponsorship, and we appreciate all those that give us money. The ongoing support of our sponsors help make some of our programs possible. And we also know that when you need to get something done right, which is an air conditioner or a car, think of the four-way test and think of a Rotarian to get that done, because they are absolutely the first source to look at. Our announcements today: Jeffrey Rudd has been putting together a social event for the Gilcrease Museum. He says the turnout, and I think this is an old number, is already 70. So it's going to be a great, great program. There's room for more. So Jeff says if you have not signed up yet, you can still do that by the end of business today, and he can work you in. That event is tomorrow night. Since there's, I heard, over 100 already going to be there, obviously you're not there, we're going to talk about you. On behalf of the club, it is my pleasure to extend my heartfelt congratulations to Lauren Monette and Jesse Eulery on their August 1st nuptials in Seattle. I understand their honeymoon in Alaska was absolutely outstanding. Sorry, Lauren, now back to reality. Terry Heritage asked that I remind you to make your gifts designated for the Adopt a Class project as soon as possible. Any amount will help us reach our goal of $7,000 in gifts of $200 each, and that helps each teacher in each classroom provide for the resources that they need. We're almost there, so anything you can do to put us over the top would really be appreciated. And wow, this is just in. Eric Ortega reported our outbound Rotary Youth Exchange student, Chase Baker, arrived safely in Campo Grande, Brazil. So outstanding, we wish Chase very, very good luck. Now, if you'll join me, we have a memorial resolution for Carl Wright given by Scott Petty. So while Scott makes his way up to the stage, let me say that it is a great honor for all of us to have said we have served Rotary with Carl Wright, and that we are very blessed to have his daughter, Marty, as a member of this club. We're privileged to share this bond with Carl. So now, Scott.
It's an honor for me to present this resolution in memory of Carl Wright, a member of the greatest generation and a true American hero. Before I do that, I'd like to introduce Carl's family. And as I call your name, please stand. Daughters Anne and Marty, son James and wife Joyce, and son-in-law Ken Alexander. Glad to have you here. Carl Leslie Wright, Jr., known to all of us as Carl, was born on February 10, 1924, and passed away at his home on May 15, 2015, at the age of 91. Carl was born in Chandler, Oklahoma, to parents Myrtle Lansaw Wright and Carl Leslie Wright, Sr. He was the first grandson of 1889 Oklahoma land run pioneer A.D. Wright. Carl was buried in Chandler, Oklahoma on May 20th, 2015, and a memorial service was held at 9 Funeral Directors Brookside Chapel on June 12, 2015. Carl met his future wife, Joyce Wernham, in 8th grade while performing bicycle tricks in front of her home. Is that true, Joyce? They dated throughout high school. He played clarinet in the marching band and graduated from Chandler High School in 1942. Carl then attended Kemper Military Academy and the University of Oklahoma, where he was a member of Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity. Carl served as an infantry soldier in frontline combat in Patton's Third Army during World War II. His company crossed the English Channel at Normandy, and he fought battles across France until he was wounded in eastern France. He was decorated with the Bronze Star for heroism and the Purple Heart. He also sustained a lifetime injury that he dealt with so very well, and I remember that clearly. After the war, he married the love of his life in 1947, Joyce Wernham. They honeymooned that year at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs and Tin Cup, Colorado. The following year, they purchased the Tin Cup Jail and spent the next 67 years vacationing there. Carl graduated from the University of Oklahoma in 1951 with a master's in business administration. He was a lifetime Sooner football season ticket holder, still attending most games until a few years ago. Carl and Joyce moved to Enid, where Carl began a career of selling life insurance. Daughters Ann and Marty were born there. In 1956, the young family moved to Cushing, and Carl worked for a trucking company and became part owner. Son James was born there. In 1970, Carl sold his interest in the trucking firm, and the family moved to Guadalajara, Mexico, where Carl wrote newspaper and magazine articles. Carl and family moved to Tulsa in 1972, and he opened Horizons Unlimited Travel a few years later. Carl was an avid traveler all of his life. He visited all 50 U.S. states, 235 countries, and cruised on over 50 ships. He was a member of the Institute of Certified Travel Agents, the Travelers Century Club, and Circumnavigators Club. Carl was a member of the Tulsa Rotary Club for 34 years, Tulsa Executives Association, serving as president in 2004, and the Tulsa Men's Club. Carl's activities over the years included fishing, tennis, reading, water sports, and safaris. He and Joyce traveled to Africa 15 times. Carl was a proud veteran, and he loved his country. He is survived by wife Joyce, daughters Ann and Marty, son James, son-in-law Ken Alexander, and grandsons Zach Alexander, Adam, and wife Sarah Alexander, and great-grandchild Addison Alexander. Also surviving are his brother Daniel Lansaw Wright, and many cousins, nieces, nephews, and friends. In addition to his parents, Carl was preceded in death by his sister Rachel Lou Wright. Therefore, be it resolved that the Rotary Club of Tulsa extend our deepest sympathy to Carl's family and many friends. On behalf of the club, we ask that our membership vote this resolution's approval by standing and sharing a moment of silence. This resolution will become part of the permanent records of the Rotary Club of Tulsa. So please stand and join the family for a moment of silence.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's always a shame when you learn about a man and the expanse of his life after he's gone. We should all reach out to each other before that time and get to know our fellow Rotarians and their interests and their pasts and their loves and the people that they love and come in contact with. So meet somebody new today after the meeting. Now I'd like to introduce our Rotarian of the Day. It's past president Matt Davis. Matt is president of Davis Group Limited. He is a Club Foundation Fellow and a Paul Harris Fellow. Among his many leadership roles within Rotary, he served as our club president from 2005-06 and currently serves on the board as Membership Services Director. He's also one of the most handsome and well-groomed hair guys in the club, over 50. So please help me welcome Rotarian of the Day, Matt Davis.
I'm going to make my remarks very brief because we're here to hear Jim, not me. In addition to being a fantastic brother to my mom and an uncle to us, Uncle Jim has been the ranking member of the Senate Armed Service Committee. He chairs the Environment and Public Works Committee. He's a veteran of the United States Army. He's the only member of Congress to have piloted a plane around the world when he retraced Wiley Post's historic flight. And he was recently ranked the #1 conservative in the entire Senate by the conservative publication Human Events. He's been married to Aunt Kay, who's right here, for 55 years. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to our United States Senator, Jim Inhofe.
All right, you guys, thank you, thank you. The last time I ran for office was in November, and the only objection that people had, I had 9 opponents. You guys remember that? 9 opponents? I can't name any of them, but I had 9. But anyway, the only thing they would say about me is Inhofe is too old to serve in the United States Senate. And my response was, when I'm too old to fly an airplane upside down, I'm too old to serve in the United States Senate. This was Matt's brother's Fred's response to that. It's a little thing, just seats 2, but most of the time it's just me anyway. I can hit more Oklahoma towns in a day, listen and help more people than I could in a week if I were driving.
435 visits so far. Look up. Jim might be heading your way now.
I'm Jim Inhofe, and I not only approve this message, I enjoy it. All right, isn't that good? And that was a rainy day, or you would have been able to see better. And let me, first of all, I'm so pleased we have so many people here that are, I've never had this many members of my family appear at once in my career. And they're here today. Not only Matt, his brother Zach is here, his sister Hannah, and her husband Joe. And let's see, who else is here? And Becky is here. Becky's not. And more important than them, my sister Marilyn is here. Hold your hand up, Marilyn. But even more important than that is the one who has tolerated me for just under 56 years, my wife Kay. Hold your hand up, Kay. One of the reasons we wanted to do this is that you guys won't remember this. There's no reason to remember anything I said 6 years ago. But 6 years ago, right after Obama came into office, I spoke to this group. And there's some things we talked about at that time that have become a reality. And I'm going to remind you, and I'm going to cover a couple of things. First of all, there is some good news. Do you know what good news is? It's something you never hear. But you're going to hear this because there is good news, and I'm going to share this with you. The second thing is what Obama has done to America, and I think that this whole 6-year experiment in socialism isn't working, and I think most people are aware of that. Margaret Thatcher said, socialism is a wonderful thing until you run out of other people's money to spend. And that's what's happened in this country. And the third thing I'm going to talk about is the light at the end of the tunnel, because there is. So quickly we'll turn through this. And let me introduce also a couple of staff people, 3 staff people. Michael Junk, hold your hand up, because they need to know who you are. There he is back at the back of the room. He's the guy that handles this part of the state, Tulsa, in the northeast sector. We have Donnell Harder. Where are you, Donnell? Donnell's operating the machine over there. Donnell is the best communication director in Washington, D.C. She's really good. You go down to vote, all the media people come up and they want to talk to her, not me. So she's really good. Then we have back here, where is Luke Holland? Luke's over here. Luke is probably the smartest guy in our office. He is now at his he's got to be, Scott, he's got to be the youngest legislative director in Washington, D.C. That's the guy who's over all of the people who are out helping you guys with problems that you have. So we have a great staff and a great bunch of people. Anyway, what happened, to fill you in on, and remind you of a little bit of the past. Republicans controlled the United States Senate until 2006. We lost that in the election of 2006. So the Democrats came in, and they were there for 8 years. Now, during that period of time, things have changed, because in January of this year, Republicans took over. And I'm saying this because there are so many people who don't know the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. If you live in Oklahoma and you don't go to Washington, you Democrats in this room, probably about a third of you are Democrats. I can look at each one of you in the eyes and say, if you were in Washington, you wouldn't be Democrats, because there are differences. If you just look in the voting behavior, take any issue that you want to, the Second Amendment rights. Every time there's a bill up to try to protect gun owners' rights, 100%, not 99, but 100% of the Republicans support it, and all but 3 Democrats oppose it. If you're looking at repealing some of the anti-business regulations of the EPA, 100% of the Republicans will vote for it, and only 3 Democrats will vote for it, as at this count. Repealing the death tax, that was 100% of the Republicans. So it is a big deal, national defense and other areas. And you have to understand that, what I'm saying is not really going to be as partisan as you might think. It's a matter of saving this country from something we've never gone through before. Now, just since we have the majority last January, we have now introduced and passed in the Senate the Every Child Achievement Act. Those of you interested in education know that the No Child Left Behind thing didn't work. We now have a bill that will work. We passed that already. We passed that in the United States Senate. We have the Keystone XL Pipeline Approval Act. Everyone in here probably knows what that. Yeah. Joe, you ought to be clapping at that one, too, with all the, but that's a major thing. And, you know, we've been sitting around waiting for that to happen for a long period of time, and it has happened. We have the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, so hopefully we'll be able to kill that thing, which I'll talk about in a minute. The National Defense Authorization Act. This is the one must. Now, I'm talking in the weeds to you guys, because I've been here before, and I know that you're well informed. And you know that we have to have a National Defense Authorization Act every year. During the 8 years that the Democrats were in charge, they waited until the middle of December each year to pass it. Now, if they'd gone into December 31st, none of our kids over there would be getting reenlistment bonuses. They wouldn't be getting hazard pay, and it would be a disaster. We already have that bill done. And then the one that I think is the most important, because I was the author, that is the DRIVE Act. And this is something that, again, is in the weeds a little bit, but it's really important that you understand. If you go back, there's an old worn-out document nobody knows about, nobody reads anymore. It's called the Constitution. If you read the Constitution, you see there are 2 things of all the garbage we do in Washington, the 2 things that we're supposed to be doing according to our founding fathers. Number 1, defending America, and number 2, roads and bridges. Just read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So those 2 things that I get involved in always come into the transportation reauthorization. The last one we did was 2005. I was the author at that time of it. We got it passed, and all of the big projects in Oklahoma that were done since that time were done as a result of that act. Now, there are some of you who really know what I'm talking about and how significant this is. If you do short-term extensions instead of an overall highway reauthorization bill, all you do is do extensions on month by month. You can't get any reforms in. You can't do any of the large projects. And if you look at the extensions the things that we have done as a result of 05, you know what I'm talking about. Well, now we passed that. The last bill we passed before the August recess was this bill, and so it's a major bill. Now, oh, you've already gone to that one. Good for you. By the way, those of you who are in the oil and gas industry, one of the problems we've had with this president is this war on fossil fuels. It may have taken Nancy Pelosi 6 months to realize that natural gas was a fossil fuel, but now she knows it, so they're still against that too. So we have some provisions in here on natural gas so that we have. Those of you who are into this thing know that one of the problems we have with natural gas commercial trucks is that they, the because of their makeup, weigh more. Well, we have an exemption for the extra weight to encourage them to use natural gas, and we even have a state option to allow them to use hub lanes, a lot of other stuff. Now, what I'm going to do is cut it off right there on this, but just to let you know that there are going to be lots of time for questions, and you may want to ask about that, and I want to share that with you. Now, the next thing I'm going to get into, and there's a reason for this, and this always offends people, and I know you're out there. I don't know whether you're going to be courteous enough not to walk out. I don't know that. But nonetheless, you know, you got to tell them. Henry Ward Beecher said, I don't like those cold, precise, perfect people who, in order not to say wrong, say nothing. In order not to do wrong, do nothing. We've got an awful lot of those in politics today. And you need to have access to the truth. You see, I'm doing this now for a living. I went through the reality of how tough it is in the real world. And now I'm here. And you don't have the time to do this, but I want to share with you some of the things that are happening. And the reason I'm talking about Obama right now and these scandals is very special, and that is because of the 7 major scandals of Obama, the 3 that will result in something that is to come. You can say, well, you sat here at the downtown Rotary and you heard it here first. So I'm going to let you know what's going to happen. And by the way, don't ever be shy about talking about elected leaders. Teddy Roosevelt said, patriotism means to stand by your country. It does not mean to stand by the president or any other elected leader, save exactly the degree that he stands by his country. It is unpatriotic not to oppose the president to the same degree that he, by inefficiency or otherwise, fails to stand by his country. And I want you to remember that. On the scandals that I'm going to share with you, these are the ones that you're going to hear a lot about later on, because it's in the midst of them. You may have kind of forgotten about some of them. The first one is the IRS scandal. The IRS scandal, and we heard rumors for a long period of time that conservative groups were getting hit by the IRS, and everyone, a lot of people didn't think that was really happening until such time as the Inspector General looked into it, and they have determined, and now the IRS admits that anyone in the United States with the word Tea Party or Patriot in their title gets the special attention from the IRS. And Lois Lerner, you've heard a lot about her. She's the one in charge for Obama, and she was the one running this program to go after the conservative groups. This is now a matter of record. Everyone knows it's true. And by the way, the IRS has said that many of Lois Lerner's emails have been lost in the hard drive crash. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? How all these emails that are incriminating disappear. It's always a hard drive crash. Well, unfortunately for her, the Treasury Inspector General have found about 30,000 of these, and they're going to be releasing these as soon as they come out and do their evaluation. Clearly, that's a violation of federal law, and you're going to hear more about that. So keep that in mind and see what the next step's going to be. The second one is the release of the Taliban 5. I'd like to have everyone here quit worrying about Bergdahl. He was insignificant. He was one that was there just to distract people from the actual what was going on. One of the obsessions that this president has had since he went into office was to close Gitmo, that's the Guantanamo Bay. That's one of the few good things we have in government. We got that in 1904. It only costs $4,000 a year. It's owned by Cuba, and more than half the time they don't even collect their $4,000. And this is the only place in the world that you can put enemy combatants. These are not criminals. These are terrorists. And so we have a place that we can put him, and he's been wanting to close that. And his way of doing it is this. Number one, he's been in office for 6.5 years. He's never put one person in Guantanamo Bay who we say, oh, they go through interrogation. What he fails to tell you, when we were able to get the big guy over there in the Middle East, we got him from information that was a result of interrogation at no place else than Gitmo. But nonetheless, he thought, well, if I can release illegally the 5 worst, most heinous terrorists in Gitmo, if I can do that, and then it'll be easy to release the rest of them, we can close Gitmo. So he took the 5 worst and released them. Now, keep in mind, and this is all documented, of all those he's released so far, 1/3 of them are back in the fight killing Americans. That's a serious thing. Have you heard it before? I suggest you probably haven't. But look at this. This guy named Mohammed Fauzi is one of the 5 that he turned loose. And I don't know whether you can read that or not. If you can, what it says, they're all rejoicing over there because that is going to be the way that they're going to be able to win in Afghanistan by having that guy back. That is, and the reason I bring that up is that is a work in progress. You're going to see what happens to these guys. The last one I'm going to mention is one I'm very sensitive about this. See that good-looking guy up there? That's Chris Stevens. Chris Stevens was the ambassador to Libya. He was in my office right before he left to take his post in Libya. And he's the one who was talking about Benghazi in Libya. Now, we have a consulate in Benghazi, not an embassy. That's in Libya. But he was talking about the dangers and the suspicion that the Taliban, that Al-Qaeda actually has an operation there and that they're training people to be terrorists. So there he is over there, and he starts warning us in advance of what's happening. In June of 2012, before the Benghazi explosion, he was over there and was warning us that they now have flags up, Al-Qaeda flags in the training camps, 10 training camps in Benghazi. On top of that, he warned us and asked for security because they had thrown IEDs over the fence at the American consul. So he said clearly that was going to happen. Then, of course, at 9:40 p.m. on the 11th of September, the anniversary of the disaster in 2012, Ambassador Stevens said, we're under attack. Now, I'm going to go back and tell you how this, it's important to understand how this works. I didn't know it before I got over there. But there are three people who have the responsibility, it's a constitutional responsibility, to advise the president of the risks and the threats that are out there to America. Those people are the CIA director, at that time it was John Brennan, the intelligence director, at that time it was James Clapper, and the chairman of the joint chairman of the Secretary of Defense, that was Leon Panetta. Well, the first one, John Brennan, we talked to him right after this took place, and he said to us, and he said publicly, but nobody picked it up. And I'm telling you this because this thing has changed now. Now, all of a sudden, the whole world knows what we knew the day after the attack. He said, and he used the word unequivocally, he said unequivocally that was an organized terror attack on Benghazi. We knew it the day after the annex was bombed. These are the words of the CIA director who reported that to the President of the United States. The next one we talked to was the intelligence director, and we said that Brennan used the word unequivocal. Is it unequivocal? He absolutely said we knew on the day that it was organized a terrorist attack. And then the last one, of course, Secretary of Defense Panetta. And in spite of that, the president, 5 days later, sent Ambassador Rice to all 5 stations on Sunday TV shows to lie to the American people and say that it was not that. Instead, it was a YouTube video. And why did he do this? This was 2 months before his re-election, and people had thought there's no longer a problem in the Middle East, and he didn't want them to know that there was terrorism. And as a result of that, 4 people died. Now, nothing happened for a year after that. Now we have Trey Dowdy, and you've been seeing this on television. He put together a committee to start looking into it, and it took them a whole year to find out what we knew within the week after that happened. Now, I tell you that because you're going to see the rest of the story unfold, and you can say, well, you saw it here first. Let me tell you what I do for a living. I always try to do this, remind people. In the Senate, it's different than the House. In the Senate, you are kind of married to your own committees. Every senator's on 2 committees. Now, I've been there long enough that I'm in a senior position in both committees. One of them is the Armed Services Committee, and the other is the Environment and Public Works Committee. By the way, Scott, I have to say this, that it has nothing to do with skill, it has nothing to do with intelligence, it's all seniority. Who's been there the longest is the guy that is in the leadership. And that's something that should change after I'm gone. But keep in mind that I've been ranking member on the Armed Services Committee so we can get these things done. And I won't go into detail on this because I don't have to do it. I would be prepared. And I talked to you 6 years ago standing at this podium and saying that the president is going to start disarming America. Well, now we are under this administration. We have our Air Force at the smallest level in history. Our ships in the Navy are the smallest since 1915, and it's the smallest number of ground troops since before World War II. And instead of me saying it, because I don't have the credibility to tell you how bad things are, But the guys that do have the credibility are people like General Dempsey, and this is the first time in history this has happened, that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has criticized his own boss, the president. He said, "Our force is so degraded and so unready that it would be immoral to use force." The vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is an admiral, Admiral Winfield. He said, "For the first time in my career, there can be instances where we may be asked to respond to a crisis. We have to say we cannot." And I don't know whether you can read this or not, but this guy right here, I know him well, Chuck Hagel, he was Secretary of Defense, and he said, we are entering an era where American dominance of the seas, in the sky, and in space can no longer be taken for granted. Of course, he's fired after that. But this is how the situation that we have on that. Now, on the other end, I talked to you already about the highway bill, but the significance of this committee, it goes far beyond that, because anyone in this audience today who has a business knows what's happening with the overregulation of the EPA. I'll tell you what poetic justice is, and this is kind of fun, because I spent 20 years getting beat up by the EPA before going into this thing. And I can remember the last development I did, it took me 26 governmental agencies to get a dock permit. And every time I was doing the things that Americans are supposed to be doing, I was expanding the tax base, I was hiring people, firing people, and doing things that the Americans are supposed to do. All that time, the chief opposition I had was none other than the EPA. Now, the poetic justice is that I now chair the committee that has jurisdiction over the bureaucracy that tried to put me out of business for 20 years. That's poetic justice. Now, of the regulations that are out there, I want to briefly touch on them because I think it's important that people know that we're trying to do something about it. First of all, we all remember I was the bad guy, and many of you in this room still think I'm the bad guy because I exposed what I felt to be a real hoax, and that was that global warming is coming, we're all going to die, and the world's coming to an end. That was back in 2002. Now, at that time, the Gallup poll, the annual poll that they have, showed that between first place and second place, people thought of global warming as the most critical, most concerning threat to America. And since that time, that same poll, this last March, showed that it's number 38 out of 40 concerns. So I think people have caught on. And for those of you who really believe that this is happening, that global warming is going to cause the world to come to an end, let me share a little story with you. The first director of the EPA that Obama hired was Lisa Jackson. Lisa Jackson had a problem. Her problem is she couldn't lie, and she didn't fit very well in this administration. And so I asked her the question. I said to her, live on TV, I said, if we were to pass any of these cap-and-trade bills that would incur a tax increase of between $300 and $400 billion a year, would this have the effect of reducing worldwide CO2 emissions of CO2? And she said, no, it wouldn't. And the reason it wouldn't, she said, the problem isn't here. It's in China. It's in India. It's in Mexico. In fact, you could carry that one step further and say, if we restrict emissions here and chase our manufacturing base to other areas where they have no restrictions, it could have the effect of increasing, not decreasing, CO2 emissions. So I say that because I want people to understand that that could be the case. Well, they tried for all those years to pass legislation to have a cap and trade, and were unable to do it. So the president, what he has been doing in many cases, is if you can't get something passed legislatively, that means by people who have to answer to the people, then let's do it through regulations and rules. And so he has the Clean Power Plan. The Clean Power Plan is one that would be that would put coal completely out of business, and is one that would be very, very costly to the American people. By their own admission, $479 billion. We've had 4 hearings so far since January in the committee that I chair. We have I'm really impressed with our Attorney General, Scott Pruitt. He's been our witness several times in Washington, and he's very much involved. We're trying to pass the ARENA Act, and the ARENA Act will say that in spite of the fact that you have a rule that's going in that is going to put America in a hardship basis in terms of, you ask the question, You know, if we, I spend a lot of time in Oklahoma because I like to talk to normal people, and there aren't any normal people in Washington. You asked the question, if we're responsible, if we have 75% of our ability to generate electricity comes from fossil fuels, then if we eliminate fossil fuels, how do you run this machine called America? Well, that's a logical question. In Washington, it's not logical. So that we are trying to correct it with an act that would actually allow states to opt out, and our problem is everything that we try to pass, we have 55 Republicans. You have to have 67 because the president will veto everything that we have. So we got to pick up 12 Democrats. Well, we're making some progress, and we're getting some of them. The waters of the United States, that's another rule. Some of you, those of you who are really into this issue, know how threatening it is. Ever since the very beginning of this country, the waters in the United States, our lakes and all that, they're the jurisdictions by the states. And what the liberals have always tried to do is get that out of the state and put it into the federal government. Well, there are there's a senator and a House member that 5 years ago introduced a bill to take the word navigable out, because all of the regulation is in the states except for navigable water. And so they wanted to shift all of that. And not only did we defeat the legislation, but we defeated both of those House and the Senate member, and they're no longer there. If you talk to Tom Buchanan, the chairman of the Oklahoma Farm Bureau, he'll tell you their number one concern of farmers is the overregulation of the EPA, primarily the waters of the United States. And the last one is the ozone requirements. I won't go into that. The cost would be $140 billion. Right now, the last time we had an ozone reduction was 2008. About half of the counties, they measure it not by states but by counties, have not even achieved that, and they want to lower it. Specifically, how it affects you in this room. Oklahoma is in attainment with the 75 parts per billion. However, if he were successful in this rule to go down to 65 parts per billion, every one of our counties would be out of attainment. That means you couldn't even keep the businesses you have, leave alone recruit any other businesses. That's a very serious thing. It would be the highest, the greatest, the largest tax increase in history. I mention that because I think that's things that many of you deal with. I'm going to quickly get into the area that bothers me the most, and that is the policy of the foreign policy of this president. You might remember, as some of you who are around, not expecting that anything I said 6 years ago is going to be remembered, but I remember. And 6 years ago, I said, we got a real problem, because that was right after Obama took office, and he adopted a policy of appeasement. That was his policy. You appease your enemies. We have enemies out there who want to kill everyone in this room, and you want to appease them. An appeaser is a guy who sells his friends to the alligators, hoping they'll eat him last. Hiram Mann said, "No man survives when freedom fails. The best men rot in filthy jails. And those who cried, appease, appease, are hanged by those they tried to please." And that's what our foreign policy is. And I don't have to go into the detail. There'll be questions about this, but I want to cover just a couple of things. We have a threat. Do you remember back when Reagan was president? He talked about, and he was ridiculed about Star Wars and all of that, that they'll never get in a position where we're going to have a threat who will be able to have to knock down a bullet with a bullet. Well, guess what? He was right. It's there. So we recognize that we have a dangerous world. We have a growing number of people that have weapons of mass destruction, and so we have ground-based interceptors to intercept them. Unfortunately, all of our 31 ground-based interceptors are on the West Coast. So when we found out in 2007 that by 2015, Iran is going to have the ability to have a bomb and a delivery system, we started negotiating with the Czech Republic. That was Václav Klaus. You might remember him. I consider him a real hero. And we said, if we can put a ground-based interceptor, we can protect not just eastern United States, but also Western Europe. And so he agreed, but his last statement was, and he asked me this personally, he said, "Can we be sure if we do this and incur the wrath of Russia, that you're not going to pull the rug out from under us?" And I said, absolutely, that won't happen. Well, the first act that the president did when he took office was to go over it, stop the ground-based interceptor, and we don't have it now. Now, the effect of that is not just it put us in danger in the United States and Western Europe, but the other problem is that we went against our word. and the whole world knew what we're doing, with other examples like that. I was in the Ukraine right after their parliamentary election. I was there at their invitation because Poroshenko, the president, and the secretary, the other top people there, they were having the election. In Ukraine, you have to get 5% of the vote to get a seat in parliament. For the first time in 96 years, there will not be one communist in the parliament of Ukraine. Isn't that amazing? And they did that because they love America, they love the West, and so immediately Putin started killing all the Ukrainians and going through. It's going on today. And what are we doing in this country? We're doing nothing. We're sending him right now K rations and blankets, and so we're not supporting the people who are our friends. And this doesn't go unnoticed. The first thing the president did was go over the Middle East and trash Israel in his 2009 first speech that was a major speech on foreign policy. He equated the Holocaust with the history of the Palestinian Authority. In other words, what's happening to the Palestinians is no worse than the Holocaust. And that pretty much tells you what the problems that we have there. And now we have our best ally over there. And I think one of the really great speeches was made by Netanyahu when he addressed a joint session of the Congress. And if any of you missed that, you need to go back and get it. Syria, he said, we have a red line now. If you cross that red line, we're gonna come after you. They cross the red line the next day, and nothing has happened. So our enemies don't trust us. Our friends don't trust us. Enemies don't fear us. And this is what we have been living with. I can go into other things, but I do want to touch briefly on the Iranian deal. You know, one thing everybody knows is it's been the policy of this country for many years. You don't try to negotiate with terrorists. And the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism is Iran. And I'm talking about Hamas in Palestine, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Assad in Syria. These people, they're dangerous. They hate us. And this is something that they are an immediate threat. I look back in the good old days of the Cold War, back when we had two superpowers. We knew what they had, they knew what we had. Now you have North Korea and Syria and Iraq and Iran and other countries, Yemen, who have potentially weapons of mass destruction and the ability to deliver them. That's serious. So all you really need to know, don't complicate the situation that you have on the Iran deal. All you have to know is there's no verification. What was it that Reagan said many years ago? He said, trust but verify. There's no verification. And it's written down in the treaty. It's not a treaty. They're trying to avoid a vote on this thing, and whether it be successful or not, I can't tell you. But in the arrangement that they have, they say that they are, if we find that Iran has something over there that we need to investigate, they have a bomb they're building or something else, they will, we can send someone in there to inspect it, but they have 24 days to cover it up. And if that's not enough, they can go all the way up to 54 days. I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing they could be making in any of their military installations in Iran that they couldn't hide in 54 days. So there is no verification. And I think it's very important that we understand that. And so what I'd like to do now is just kind of get to the end of this thing and share with you the major problem that we have. Now, when I say this, I'm more of a Jesus guy than probably many of you in this room. So a lot of you are not going to agree. A lot of you are going to be upset and saying that, the things I'm about to tell you. But it doesn't really bother me because our country has been great, the greatest country in humankind because of how this country was originally founded. And now we have a president who embraces Islam and rejects the Judeo-Christian values that have made this country so great. So what I want to do is just say why I'm bringing this up. What we're doing here today is kind of a trial. We did the same thing this morning in Bartlesville, and we're doing this now all over the country. A wake-up call. We have 17 Republicans that are running for president. And unfortunately, a lot of them are thinking they could get the nomination by being anti-Republican and saying, I'm the only one who's going to stand up against the Republican Party. Well, you already know, I've talked about the issues that we stand for. There's a difference in the parties. But you don't do it that way. I'm waiting, and I want you to wait and look and see which of the candidates does rise up and address the things that I'm talking about today. And I want to make sure that that's right. And one thing is that we have started this country as one nation under God. And that's kind of been set aside. I'm not sure how many people that bothers in this room, but when you stop and think about it, you think about what this country was, how it started. There was an oath of office that I used to use in speeches all the time. I stumbled onto it, and I thought it fits in here pretty well. Do you know what the oath of office was in the earlier years of this country? I'll read it to you. I do profess faith in God, the Father, and the Lord Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost. I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, to be given in divine inspiration, and I will conduct my office accordingly. Does that sound like today? Does that sound like this America? It doesn't. In fact, in 1854, the House Judiciary Committee said, quote, the great, vital, and conservative element in our system is the belief of our people in the pure doctrines and divine truths of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know, right now, today, historians are looking back and they're saying, wait a minute, something's wrong here. We could not have won the Revolutionary War. It couldn't have happened. You're a handful of trappers and frontiersmen out here taking on the greatest army in the face of this earth. And it cannot be done. And you all remember the Patrick Henry speech that he made, the very famous speech. And in that speech, you may have overlooked, there are 3 references as to why we could take on the greatest army in the face of this earth. And all 3 were references to God. He said, we are not weak if we make the proper use of those means which the God of nature has placed in our power, armed in the holy cause of liberty, in such a country as that which we possess, we are invincible by any force our enemy can send against us. Besides, we will not fight our battles alone. There's a just God who reigns over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles with us. It was very clear at that time, and that's what worked. So now things have changed. You know, as I repeat, the enemies don't fear us, friends don't trust us. We're not really the one nation under God anymore. But we have been, Marilyn, my sister over here, I want to share something with you we have not shared before. Many years ago, we weren't from Oklahoma. We were actually born in Des Moines, Iowa. Remember, Marilyn, how cold it was up there? Yeah, and I was the runt of the litter, and we'd stand in a row to walk to school. I was in the kindergarten at the time, and I was the only one who never knew what was going on because of snow drifts. I couldn't see over them, so we were really glad to get out of there. But at that time, our dad and Ronald Reagan officed together. Ronald Reagan was the sportscaster for WHO Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. And we thought of him, Dutch Reagan, as my dad called him, as almost a member of the family. He'd come by, and we followed him. He was my idol all those years that happened. That was long before he ever thought about doing anything political. And one of the greatest speeches, and I can remember, you know, Kay and I have 20 kids and grandkids. They've all heard this speech, The Rendezvous with Destiny, one of the greatest speeches of all time. And in this speech, he talks about, this is right after Castro took over Cuba. And he talks about how people were trying to escape from Cuba. And during that time, a small craft was able to escape, and it washed up on the shore in southern Florida. There was a lady there. This is all a rendezvous with destiny. And he started talking to her about the atrocities of Castro, Cuba. And after he's through, she said, I guess we don't know how lucky we are. He said, no, we're the ones who are lucky. We have a place to escape to. You see, we've been that light on the hill. We've been that beacon of freedom in this country. And that's what is going out. And I wasn't going to do this, but I am going to do it. And because I had a very personal involvement. How many of you are old enough to remember when the communists, both Castro and the Soviet Union, were trying to take over Nicaragua? Remember Daniel Ortega, the Sandinistas? Remember that? You remember that, Scott? Yeah, that was, and we were taking the side of the freedom fighters. The freedom fighters down in Nicaragua They were wonderful people, but they were young. And I used to go down there to encourage them. And there was a hospital tent that's 15 miles into the Honduras border from Nicaragua. And we go to, at that time, I communicated pretty well in their language. And in this hospital tent was probably half the size of this room. It's a huge thing. In the middle, they had the operating. No shielding or anything. It's primarily amputations because of the landmines and all that. And so the freedom fighters would come back. And most of them were the average age 18 and 19 years old because the older ones have already been killed. And I can remember telling them, we're very proud of you in America for standing up for your freedoms, for making your fight. We wonder how in the world you can do it, against the impossible odds. And I gave them that little talk. And then I'd go around the room and I'd talk to them individually. The last bed I came to, I always remember, because she was about 19 years old. Her name was Maria Elena Gonzalez. And she looked up at me, and she, by the way, that was her third trip back to the hospital tent. They had amputated her right leg that morning. The blood was coming through the bandage. And she looked up at me, and she said, "Es porque han tomado los campos, es porque han tomado todo de lo que tenemos, pero de veras, ustedes en los Estados Unidos entienden por qué tuvieron que luchar para su libertad, lo mismo que estamos luchando ahora." What that means is, she said, well, yeah, we're fighting for our freedoms because they've taken everything that we have. They've taken our farms. But surely you in the United States of America understand because you had to fight for your freedom the same as we're fighting for ours. That little girl couldn't read or write. She didn't know if our revolution was 300 years ago or 30 years ago. But she saw us as the beacon of freedom. We were the beacon of freedom. And I would say this, it's up to you guys to look at who's running and determine in your mind who is has the most love for America and who is the most qualified to reignite that beacon of freedom. If you do that, you'll be doing the Lord's will, and you'll be richly blessed for it. Thank you very much. We're right on the hour. Questions? All right. I've been informed that we're pretty close to the hour. We've left 3 minutes, I know of. If anyone has to walk out, that's fine. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to respond to it. Questions? Yes, sir. Is it true in the Iran nuclear deal that we are obligated to defend Iran against any attacks in their nuclear facilities, including forces of Israel? Yeah, that is true. Now, John Kerry would deny that. Let's keep in mind, there are only 3 people who voted against his confirmation to be Secretary of State. I was one of the 3. And more people, my fellow senators, come up to me now and say, what did you know that we didn't know? We wish we had voted with you. Yeah, there are all these things. But see, the document they have is not specific yet. But those indications are there. They have also said, let's keep in mind, that they're not going to allow any of us on any of their military establishments. Nonetheless, and I covered that pretty well. So what you are saying is true in the initial form, and it just shows how ridiculous that is. I'm glad you're interested. Yes, sir.
Yes, who's going to work on the ban on exporting oil? Is somebody going to remove that so we can stimulate?
Well, see, people don't understand that, but more and more are understanding that. In the war on fossil fuels, the president knows that if we get stagnant in this country and we can't export our gas and our oil, that we're going to be in a position where we'll have a dying oil and gas industry. Right now, as we speak, in the state of Oklahoma, people are being laid off by the large numbers now. We've got to do the export. And fortunately, people are better informed about that now. And fortunately also, it used to be that oil and gas was just a Western United States issue. But now, with the Marcellus chain and all of that, even Pennsylvania and New York, they're developing that. So people are becoming more aware of that. I was honored to be invited to go to Lithuania to open their first terminal over there. And that would lessen the dependence that people have on Russia over there, and that would be a wonderful thing. So if we're able to do this, we accomplish that, along with reviving that industry. Right now, we are going to have to do it. So the answer is resounding yes. We are planning to do that. We have more and more people who are opposed to it who are now for it. They've tried to say, well, if we do that, we're going to raise the price of gas at the pumps. We all know that that isn't true. You merely have an industry that would die. The answer is yes. Yes, sir. Tell us about your peace efforts in Africa. Well, there isn't time. But let me just say this. I just finished my 140th African country visit. And you might remember we've talked about this before. And Jerry over here is in the adoption business. And we kind of became familiar with that when Kay and I were blessed with our only adopted grandchild, a little girl that we found 2 years old in Ethiopia, probably would have died in the next couple of days. And she now is she's 14 years old, reads at college level, and she's, by the way, of all of our 20 kids and grandkids, the only ones who aren't walking distance from Tulsa are in Arkansas, because Molly is a professor at the University of Arkansas. She adopted this little girl, and she was voted, you don't know this, Jerry, she was voted the outstanding student of the year in all of the junior highs in Fayetteville, Arkansas. This one little girl who would be dead today, and it's a wonderful thing. It's going alive and well. And by the way, Jerry, you're doing wonderful things in adoption. You stop and think about it. These kids. If you don't adopt them, they're going to die. And so we're kind of heavy into that, and it's going along well. Last question. Anybody? Yeah, I mean, are you talking about for our distribution of energy? Yeah. Well, yeah. We didn't do any good to have the revolution that's taking place today if we can't get it around where it needs to be, and we're going to do it. But let's keep in mind, this is a partisan issue. And you have anything having to do with fossil fuels, there's not going to be any help unless we get up to 67 votes to be able to pass the legislation that would do the very thing that you want done. Hopefully, we're going to get there before the next year and a half. If not, we're going to depend on the next administration to help America survive. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. It's our history for several years to present a book to our adopted school, Celia Clinton. And the book is The Rocket's Red Glare. If I could get you to sign that book for the school, we'd very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Also, we kind of have an internet crawler named Brad Anthematum that cruises around eBay looking for Rotary memorabilia, and he knew that Senator Inhofe would be here, and he came across a couple of items that he would like for the senator to have, just based on the fact that they're matchbooks. Kind of dates the age that these might come from, but we're not even sure that you even knew they existed. That's right. If Brad could stand up. Thank you, Brad. I literally haven't seen a matchbook in about 20 years. Used to be a good place to write a phone number. Please thank today's volunteers. They're on the screen now, I hope. And let's give them all a round of applause for all the great work they did today. Thank you all for attending Rotary today, and go out and make a difference. Thank you.